This is your lesson on the changing role of women. Please use this graphic organizer to organize your notes on this topic. The civil rights movement of the 1950s and 60s inspired many other movements for rights among other groups. One of the main groups is women. If you think about the role of women from Reconstruction through World War II, we talked about how the traditional role of women is staying home, cooking and cleaning, and taking care of the kids. And this traditional role is not a negative thing. It's only negative when women don't have any other option. During industrialization and the progressives, we discussed how women got the right to vote and they were able to work in the factories, but they weren't paid as much. And the role of women during World War II, we just finished discussing on how women work in the factories. Now we're going to look at how the role of women changed during the civil rights movement. Women activists were inspired by the achievements of the civil rights movement, and they took action to gain equality for themselves, particularly in the workplace. Workplace disadvantages include the following, and these should be included on your graphic organizer under workplace disadvantages. Discrimination in hiring practices against women. Many companies would not hire women simply because they were women. So they faced this kind of discrimination in the workplace when looking for a job. Many companies would hire a man over a woman any day for a role of a doctor or a lawyer or anybody in a company like that. Women were restricted to traditional jobs such as teacher or nurse. And then once they were married, they were told they had to stay at home with the children. Women also received lower wages than men who did the exact same job. Before 1963, when the Equal Pay Act was passed, women were paid 59 cents for an hour of work when men received $1 for the exact same work done in that hour. There is still a pay gap today, but it has improved greatly. Improved conditions. One group that worked very hard to fight for women's rights was the National Organization for Women, which is abbreviated NOW. It fought for equal rights for women in all areas of life, including jobs, education, and marriage. This group was created in 1966 and is still around today fighting for the rights of women. In 1966, Betty Friedan was one of the most famous people who began to found NOW. A feminist is an activist for women's rights, and Betty Friedan wanted them to have greater opportunities in society. The goal of NOW is to fight discrimination based on gender. Other federal legislation included Title IX. Title IX you still hear frequently in the news today. This forced colleges to give women equal athletic opportunities. For example, many times schools would give male athletes, especially football players, money for scholarships instead of giving them to female athletes in other sports. And so now women have to have equal opportunities. So for example, there does not have to be men's football and women's football, okay? There just has to be an equal number of sports. So men at a college might play lacrosse, football, basketball, and swimming, and women might have field hockey, soccer. They might also have swimming, and then they might have another sport that they play. But they have to have the equal opportunities for women at the college level. Another important piece of legislation is the Equal Rights Amendment, which NOW began to campaign for in the 1970s. They wanted to add the ERA to the Constitution. The Equal Rights Amendment states that equality of rights under the law shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of sex. The ERA did not pass when it was sent to the states for ratification. However, it's an important piece of legislation that helped women make progress in the workplace. More women than ever became doctors and lawyers and rose to higher level jobs in their companies. So despite the ERA's failure and a focus on equal opportunity employment, You can see that in 1981, President Reagan appointed Sandra Day O'Connor as the first female justice of the United States Supreme Court. It created a wider range of options and advancement for women in business and public service. By 1993, 48 women were serving in Congress. Many other activists were inspired by the civil rights movement and took action to gain equality. The status of women has changed significantly since we began learning about women's rights at the beginning of the school year. However, they do still have a lot of gains to make in the face of equality in society.